Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you
How
this
are you?
fine day?
Oh, I'm battling a cold and it's been a long weekend. So I'm a little slow today for sure.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah, I'm a little slow. These things happen. I do have the privilege though of watching this fat little squirrel almost ready for winter running right around outside my window. So I get that. How are you?
I am good. I am recovering from gardening. Um, like you have a cold. I have like lung stuff from inhaling mulch and
Mm.
all that fun stuff. Like not a side effect that I was aware that I was going to be experiencing when I started gardening. But part of it is restoring the dirt so it can actually sustain growing something. And
Mhm.
so we got what's called a chip drop, which means a landscaper comes and dumps a mountain of mulch in your front yard, and then you get to distribute it. But the first load wasn't big enough to cover everything, and so we had to order another drop. And
Wow.
so that was part of weekend endeavors, was spreading more mulch. And I stupidly was like doing just a little bit, and I was like, I don't need to put on the mask for one load of mulch, like. And so I went and did my one thing, and then I woke up like just all crusty and yucky inside. But I
Mm.
learned my lesson. Even if I'm only doing one little wheelbarrow of it, I will put on the mask to avoid inhaling all of the stuff from the mulch.
You must have an enormous amount of mulch.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
pretty much,
it's
yeah, it's a lot if you're reacting to it. That's incredible.
and we are having, I don't know how this is coming out on the podcast, but we're definitely having some connectivity issues today. So all I heard was big mulch or something like that.
I was just saying
But
that you
the
must that's okay. Go on. Move on.
But the other interesting side of this weekend was that I baked my first ever loaf of sourdough bread.
Very
Have
cool.
you
How did
ever
it turn
made, have you ever made sourdough bread?
out? I've consumed enough to make me an expert, but I have not made it. No. I thought about it the
I
other day and
had,
like, no, I don't want something that I have to keep feeding and keep alive and all that.
yeah, it's a whole thing. I really had no idea how much work was involved in doing it. My first loaf was wonderful just because it was my first loaf, but my Dutch oven that you bake them in, I forgot that my normal sized one had broken a while back, and so I only had the small one. So I like cram the bread into a pan that was too small, and so it came out pretty ugly, and I think not as airy as it could have been because it didn't have space to expand.
Mm.
But new pot is ordered, and I'm looking forward to the next one, which will be easier because now I understand the steps. I don't have to like um, do so much work to try and figure it out. And I did have a lot of coaching from my friend Bethany, who was so kind to provide me the starter, which is like, like some 100-year-old starter or something. So this has been kept alive for longer than my starter is older than I am. How kind of funny is that? My bread existed before I did, which then makes me think of the recently has been popping up my in my feed that your ovaries existed inside your grandmother.
Mhm.
And so like part of you existed like two generations ago. And um So I feel like there's ties between humans and sourdough.
I mean, everything is interconnected. I definitely believe that. And what we breathe in is, stardust from a million years ago. So it's all been around for all a really long time. And somehow it all just magically works together. But I'm excited for your sourdough journey. I have seen some really cool stuff on my buddy TikTok. I have seen some amazing, amazing, it's just artwork. And like everything teaches impermanence, because you got to eat it to really let it live its full life. I was recently gifted a loaf that someone had made, like at 5 o'clock in the morning before their photo shoot. And I feel like that bread was even more delicious than any other bread, because somebody had gone through the effort of making it just for me, So there's something very magical about sourdough. It's a very cool process. So I'm excited to see what you're going to have to start posting pictures of your creations.
Once they start getting a little bit more beautiful, and I don't care how many wonderful videos you tell me are on TikTok, I'm not going there, but I know that the internet in general is a bountiful resource of learning. So I will figure out some other uses for my sourdough, but I need to just master the basics first.
For sure. The loaf that I was gifted was just a good old fashioned, round loaf, and it was gorgeous. It was beautiful. It didn't have to be, super fancy, but the people that really get into it, it's amazing. What I didn't know that bread could do that. So it's really a cool thing to see.
Nice. You have anything else interesting to share from your weekend?
Nothing positive or exciting, no. Nothing that wouldn't end in a downer, so let's just move on. And if I go into a coughing fit, just forgive me. I'm going to mute myself if that happens.
So, well, speaking of interesting topics, today we are going to be talking about forest therapy. And you are our in-house expert here. I have experienced your forest therapy and just absolutely believe in the healing power of being out in nature. But I think we need to just start at the very, very basics. Like, what is forest therapy?
Yeah, great question. There it goes. Sorry, guys. Great question. And I'm super excited to share about this, because there's a lot of different terminology out there. And it's, I think, important that we make some distinctions. We've always talked about spending time in nature, and how you spend time in nature really changes your experience of it, right? So last week, I think I shared, I went on a little lichen exploration walk, and we looked at everything through a tiny little not microscope, but magnifying glass, and we got to see the tiny, tiny world that is all around us. And then I have a friend of mine that does these incredible hikes, and she does this like mile high, challenge that's so incredible. And so she's spending a very active time in nature, right? She's hiking. And I'm sure by this point, everyone has heard of forest bathing. So forest bathing really is a Japanese practice of spending intentional time in nature, particularly the deeper the forest, the further you are away from others, the more healing and calming and relaxing it can be. And so a lot of times when I say that I do guided forest therapy, people are like, yeah, I know how to spend time in nature. And while, yes, anyone can walk into, a grove of anywhere and spend some time kind of just relaxing and wandering around, that's forest bathing. Guided forest therapy is different. It is a modality where you are intentionally guided through an experience in a wooded area. And really the idea is that it helps you process a lot of that internal chatter that's going on in your mind, so it's got a ton of benefits, but the interesting, or I should say the what sets it apart is that it is therapeutic. It is not therapy per se, not in the legal licensed way, but it is therapeutic. So it's really different, and I'm really excited about it. Everyone says that forest therapy today is what yoga was 40 years ago. So this is definitely a new modality that's trending, and I think it's going to be huge. It already has a pretty good presence, I will tell you.
So I will say, we do forest therapy on our retreats. And since I am not a forest therapy guide, I get to kind of be a participant for that time when you're doing the forest therapy. And I think what always amazes me is just seeing how like the other participants just like dive in and surrender to the process. And on the last retreat, when I heard this woman just singing to the tree, I don't know, I was a little bit like surprised that based on the instructions that you had given us, that that someone had just broken into song like that with the tree. And it just really felt magical being out there in that experience. And I think the trees nature can bring the best out of us.
Yeah. People's experiences really have been interesting, but I will say that like the scientific benefit of it, right? Because there's the spiritual and then there's the scientific, and I very much believe in how intertwined they are. But it lowers your heart rate, it lowers your blood pressure, it lowers your cortisol, all that stress that you feel. And so part of it is that, yes, you have to show up and kind of give yourself over to the moment. The fact that, to be clear, I did not direct anyone to sing to a tree, but
Right.
we created this space, like that wasn't part of the instructions, but we created a space that was free enough that this person allowed this to bubble up in them, right? And so then that was their expression of it, which is so amazing, because it would never have occurred to me in 100 years to suggest that when somebody do that, so it's really interesting when you give people the space to just be who they are, what messages come through, what experiences they create for themselves. I would love to explain a little bit more about what a session looks like, because I don't want people to think, oh no, it's therapy, it is, first of all, let's destigmatize the word therapeutic. Like drinking my cup of coffee is therapeutic, like anything that makes you feel good and helps you process something that you need to process, that's therapeutic. And so when you come into a forest therapy session, it's usually about a 2-hour experience. You come in, and the first thing we do is really just get grounded, really get into our bodies in the present moment. We do a little meditation, we do a little stretching, we do enough to kind of separate yourself from the car, the parking lot, your problems, your kids waiting for you at home, all of that. So very much about being in the present moment. There's a lot of present moment awareness type work in forest therapy. And so from there, we just start going on a walk, and it's always a simple walk. It's not hard hiking. It is not, going uphill and challenging yourself physically. It is not intended to get your heart rate going. Quite the opposite. It's meant to be a leisurely stroll, because the focus isn't on your body and your heart rate and your muscles like a hike would be, right? Which is great for those who like hiking. But guided forest therapy is about being in your mind and really just being present in nature. So as we go for this walk, which might end up being a mile or 2 or something like that, but it's so slow and easy that it just feels good. And so along our route, we pause, I extend an invitation, a way to experience the forest. And then you have your own experience, maybe for like 15, 20 minutes or so. And then we get back together in a circle. Those that would like to share their experience do. And that to me is such an exciting part, because everyone has a different experience. People notice different things. And, it's kind of like when you quiet your mind, you start getting the answers you're looking for. And it's exactly that. And then at the end, after the last invitation, we end with a tea ceremony, which is so beautiful because we really get to just, again, reground ourselves. Literally, you can make tea from like the pine needles that are in the forest. So you could literally have the tea that came from the forest that you just walked through. And give back, to the forest as well, and say thank you and practice some gratitude too. So forest therapy is something that you can definitely do all the time. Here in Murphy, I offer it once a month, which feels pretty good. But anytime that you go out, you could find a group of like-minded people and just have this amazing experience.
I'm wondering if there's any ways that us city dwellers can experience some of the forest therapy benefits when we don't have the ability to go find a forest, and just something that we could experience on a more regular basis. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. Let's start with the fact that even in busy South Florida, there are plenty of wooded areas. South Florida is lucky to have a really good park system. And so if you find a local park, which there's probably one within 5 miles of wherever you live, go run into the forest there. There was in Oakland Park, there's Easterland Park, and there are parts of Easterland Park where people camp out and they stay overnight. And so you could absolutely have a guided forest therapy session in there. You could have it at the beach, and then there's versions when you have the right guide. You could even do it virtually. Like I could host a virtual guided therapy course, and you could sit at a desk, right? Like we have this for example, retirement communities where the elderly can't really go out into a forest, but they want to have a forest therapy experience. Well, you just bring the forest indoors. You could do this in hospitals, you can do this in daycares, you could do this anywhere. But that's why it's important to have a certified guide, because this person is going to know how can we create this experience no matter where we are. Sometimes it ends up being torrential rains, and it's really hard to tune into yourself when you're battling the raindrops, so maybe that day you do the session indoors, or the winter months, maybe it's too cold to go outside and you can still do it indoors. But again, that's why it's important to have a therapist per se, a guide is the better word, a guide to help you have this experience. So always keeping in mind the difference between forest bathing, right, and guided forest therapy. So you could definitely go sit at the beach and enjoy the moon and the stars and the ocean and really sit with yourself. That's nature bathing, right? That's like forest bathing, but more ocean and less forest. But having a guide is another experience altogether.
Could you give us an example of like one of the guided prompts, for lack of a better word, that you might get on a forest therapy session?
Yeah, like one of my favorites, and this was one of the first ones I ever gave, was go out into the forest and see what message a tree might have for you. Like find a particular tree, don't judge it, just see what you're drawn to and just sit with it for a minute, and see what happens. And so 15 minutes later, everybody comes back in, and there was this one particular woman, and I'd love to share her story. She had just been going through it in her own life, had dedicated a lot of her life to raising her kids and now raising her parents again, as happens when we get older. And so she was holding a lot of that, kind of internal struggle. And when I gave her the invitation to go out and sit with a tree, 15 minutes later, she came back and she was in full tears. And I'm like, wow, this person has had a connection and experience. And so we opened the floor and, would you like to share? And she did. And she said that when she first approached the tree, she thought, oh man, this is so sad. Like, here's this big giant tree and it can't go anywhere and it can't do anything and it can't, travel the world, And then, and I'm probably going to cry because I just thought it was such a huge revelation for her. She said, but then I realized this tree has been here for like 200 years, right? Because of how big it is and how thick it is. And she's like, this tree has seen the world. The world has passed by in front of it, right? I am passing by. My children will pass by. My great-great-grandparents passed by, right? The millions of people that lived before me all passed by in front of this tree. And the parallel of that experience of looking at the tree with her own life just gave her a level of understanding that really just soothed her heart, right? So it kind of brought down that deep sadness that she had about, not being able to do anything for herself and not experiencing life because she had dedicated her life to her children and her parents and, the struggle of survival, right? But she was able to see the beauty in her own experience by seeing the beauty in this big, majestic tree that had been here for 200 years. So that's the kind of experience that you can really have when you surrender to the moment, and just let your mind show you the path, Does that make sense?
Beautiful. Yes, I love that. Thanks for sharing that story. So obviously, people can come experience forest therapy on our retreats. Next one coming up January 9th through 11th in Sebastian, Florida. And people living in or near Murphy, Carolina, I know that you have regularly scheduled forest therapy events that they can come partake in. But what if someone has no access to these particular things? How does someone find a forest therapy guide?
Yeah. So there, obviously Google is the first place to, start guided forest therapy near me. But there are also, for example, I went to the Forest Therapy School. So if you go to foresttherapyschool.com, then you see like their big nationwide directory. And my guess is that you'll find more than you think is out there, much like Reiki practitioners and sound bath practitioners, what you're putting out into the world doesn't cover the cost of marketing. So it's not going to pop up on your phone all the time. It's not a lucrative thing, right? So you have to go looking for them. You have to go and say, hey, do you guys know anybody? So start there, start looking at the Forest Therapy School, see what's near you. And that's just one school. There's so many other schools that offer this service. And I guarantee you that there's something in your area. And if not, like you said, there's the joy of a retreat. I mean, take some time out of your life and go experience a guided forest therapy session at a retreat. To me, that's like, the pinnacle of the experience, because you're already in such an open, good space for it. So I'm sure there's something in the area. And if not, call me. I'll set up something virtually. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. The beauty of, modern technology is, we can link up pretty much anywhere, everywhere, and makes lots of possibilities open. Is there anything that we haven't shared yet about forest therapy that the people out there need to know?
I would just reinforce, don't be afraid of the word therapy. It really is just a wonderful experience with a guide, particularly if you're the type of person that your mind is always racing and you're always, you can't sleep because your mind is going 100 miles an hour, or you want to go sit in nature, but you're like, I can't calm down. I can't stop thinking. I can't stop worrying. This is the perfect opportunity for a guided forest therapy experience when you just need a little bit of guidance to help you focus your thoughts, clear your mind, ground yourself so that you can get those answers you're looking for. That's why we all go out there and try and meditate anyway, right? Like you're meditating, you're sitting outside, you go to the the full moon ceremony on the beach. Why? Because you're trying to quiet the voices in your head, you're trying to calm down, you're trying to connect. And sometimes you just need a little bit more, like when we have guided meditations, right? Sometimes those are beautiful, so guided forest therapy. Don't worry about the word therapy. It's okay. Just come have a cool experience and allow yourself to be led.
Beautiful. Yeah, I was thinking too, like the forest therapy, some of, our tools that we use, some of the woo, the spiritual, all of that can feel maybe a little bit uncomfortable for some people. But like nature is everywhere. It's just part of living on planet Earth. And there's a piece of it that feels a little less woo to me. And so maybe more open to people that are kind of entry level into this practice. Like chakra balancing might sound scary because what are chakras? I don't know what they are. I don't know what they have to do with anything, but we all know what a forest is. We all know what nature is. And so, if you're starting out on your journey, I think forest therapy can be just a beautiful entry level activity to start dipping your toes in the water, to experiencing something more than just the 3D world that we experience on a daily basis.
Yeah. Forest therapy is about nothing other than yourself and your attention. That's really it. You could go through the entire experience and not speak a word if that's your vibe. It's not, a group therapy session where you get asked a question and you have to talk about your childhood trauma. Like, it's not that. It is simply an opportunity to ground and quiet the mind and see what comes up. It's really a practice based in curiosity, and mindfulness. So there's really nothing scary about it, honestly. I even bring you a chair and tea. There's nothing hard about it. Trust me.
Beautiful. Yeah. Is there anything we're missing?
No, I think that's it. If you guys have any other questions about forest therapy or you would like to know more, please absolutely reach out. There's a ton of resources on the internet as well. I mean, I literally have a 3-inch binder full of research onto scientific articles explaining why and how forest therapy is good for you. But there's nothing better than just having an experience of it. So definitely connect with me. Check my calendar. 2026 calendar is going to be out soon. And yeah, I'm excited for it. Hop on the trend.
Yeah. I will also add, it's not in there right now, but I will add in the show notes the link to the forest therapy page on our website so people can check that out more. And hey, if you want to experience it firsthand with Graciela and I, join us on our Wild and Free retreat. That's January 9th through the 11th down here in Sebastian, Florida, at a very magical retreat center down here. And also, it's Thanksgiving week, so I do want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving out there. I hope you get to spend it with people that you love and enjoy. And I think that's a wrap. So have a magical day, everyone.
All right. Bye, guys.